So, Peacemaker Resources is an organization that goes into schools and teaches children social and emotional learning skills. And so we're teaching kids, but at the same time, we're modeling for teachers how to teach social emotional learning and how to work with kids in a way that's open and the most effective ways of connecting with them. And so in addition to that, we make sure that our curriculum and our learning is culturally responsive, so that we are making sure our approaches are really match with the way kids learn the best. And then we also do some training in trauma-sensitive approaches so that teachers are aware of the brain science behind kids who've come from trauma and toxic stress. And then they're able to better make connections with the kids and help them learn and feel a sense of belonging more.
Yeah. So it sounds like...
So I believe, and our work is founded on the belief, I believe, that that kids learn best if they are in an environment where they feel safe and that they belong. But it's hard for kids to feel like they belong if their experiences as a person of color or an indigenous person isn't validated, isn't understood to be something that affects how they live every day. And so that trust can really only be built if people understand their own racial identity, and then know understand the racial identities of those that they work with, and understand the history behind that and the everyday realities of people of color. So cultural humility helps in that staff members can better understand and respond to the experiences that people of color have had in the past, and the experiences that they're having in the present. We do trainings on historical trauma, and that helps educators understand the experiences that have affected people for generation after generation. And then that helps them respond in a way that is more helpful and to the students. We bring the concept of historical trauma in terms of the people that are living here now, and so that educators who have not gotten this history before are able to understand that this affects the students and their ability to learn. As you say, that the students don't even understand it, and so it's important for the educators to know that the epigenetics and the science of the historical trauma has an effect on how they learn. So as an educator, I might say something that is a microaggression without me knowing it. And I might have good intentions, like saying, I'd like you to speak for your race, or you're a credit to your race. I might be thinking that I am making
A compliment?
yeah, that I'm actually complimenting a student. But that's actually a microaggression, and as a white person, I might not even understand why that is so. And so that's why it's really important for me to understand my own racial identity, and also to understand the identities of others, so that I can avoid harming a student and breaking a trust that is really important in the learning process. Yeah, I need to be aware of my own identity and the identity of people of color and indigenous students so that I can better connect with them and be aware of microaggressions or other ways that I might be harming them or our relationship. If we address the disparities in discipline practices, for example, it's not only helping the people of color, but it's also helping everyone in the school environment to be able to reach their potential. So I think if educators understand the history and the experiences of people of color, that they are more likely to be able to validate what the student is experiencing, and then that brings better, greater equity. But the community idea, I just keep thinking of the quote from an Aboriginal activist that says something like, if you are here to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if you're here because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together. So I think that's how it affects everybody and the whole community. So helping staff understand their own unconscious bias and understanding their own racial identity helps them be able to lift up the students. Yeah.
But
Well, and ultimately, it's the way that kids learn best and the way that they thrive is for them to feel like they are, that they matter and that their voice matters. And so having that connection with a caring adult, especially an educator, helps them with that, and so that they are able to learn better. So I actually have a staff member who's Native American, and she's super articulate about this, and she is also, she has a job that takes her to the Twin Cities often, and so I'd almost prefer that if you want to interview somebody about some of these things,
yeah,
that she'd be great. She does a lot of training around historical trauma, and so she can speak to that very well, and as well as she works with the Minnesota Communities Caring for Children, and so they do a lot of work around adverse childhood experiences. And yeah, so kids who grow up in safe environments, they learn to trust adults and others. And kids who grow up in environments that are not safe, that are stressful in some way, especially that toxic stress, they are more likely to not trust, and then they are more likely to have behaviors that do not fit with the school environment, or they totally just aren't there. They sort of do the fight or flight thing, and so so they need a special kind of like care and relationship. The things that helps the most with kids coming from trauma is establishing strong relationship with the adults around them. So both in terms of the racial understanding and in terms of understanding trauma, kids, the trajectory for kids who have come from trauma can actually be changed by a caring adult and the relationship they have. And so that what the educator does in terms of understanding their own background and understanding the background of the child can change that trajectory so that the child isn't condemned to those health outcomes, those negative health outcomes that are a part of childhood trauma. When school role models are trauma informed, it helps them build trust with students. And then that can change the trajectory of what happens with that student. So building trust with trusted adults have lifelong benefits to the students. Building trust with role models, adult role models, has lasting benefits, health benefits to the children as they grow.